If you're new in a sales role and you're looking to become the top performer in a matter of weeks or months, no matter what the sales role is, I want to walk you through these 11 strategies that, if you engage in them, will transform your ability to rise to the top really, really damn quickly. So that's what we're going to go through today. There's going to be 11 areas that, if you choose to focus upon them, if you're in any type of new sales position and you're looking to impress, increase your volume of sales, get the biggest return on investment, these 11 steps are going to ensure that you get to that outcome that much quicker. And this is based upon my experience of the last 15 years being in different sales roles in terms of the ultimately experiences that I've had myself, the hundreds of salespeople that I've hired at this point, and who I've seen that's gone on to become extremely successful, and those who just haven't effectively. So let's get into it. So, number one, the first thing that you want to do is attend sales calls with the most experienced team members. There's going to be so much you're going to learn from the people that already have that template for success. Now, if you're, for example, part of an outsourced sales team or you're calling for a different company, then the key to that is attend the sales calls with the client on the other side who's actually closing the business, because then you'll get the framework for success. So make sure that you attend sales calls with the most experienced team members and aim to attend at least 10 calls so you can begin to understand the tactics and strategies around what a successful outcome looks like. So that's the first bucket. In absence, and let's go through point number two now. So in absence of being able to get direct access to the actual sales call where you can attend live, and there's a difference, of course, when you attend live. It's why there's such a big premium that's placed upon live training that's different from any secondary form of training, because to a degree, it maximizes your level of engagement and the emotional essence you get from the call. And if you don't feel it here, you don't tend to learn it here. So that's why there's such a premium that's placed upon ultimately the live nature of workshops. And there's nothing better than seeing success that's live in public in any event. So first of all, attend sales calls live as much as you can. Aim to attend at least a dozen, and already that's going to give you the necessary template for success. And in absence of being able to attend a dozen, one is better than zero, five is better than one, and the mathematics applies, so on and so forth. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're unable, so that's point number one. Point number two is that if you're unable to attend the actual sales call itself, then you need to start looking at the actual sales calls. So watch the previous call recordings. But what a lot of people do when they watch, and this is why for a lot of people, the education that they intake fails, is because they don't actually intellectually and emotionally engage with their subject material. So people watch and they have Netflix on in the background. They allow disturbances that come into the room. There's all kinds of issues that materialize that mean that you're not actually engaging with the content that you are trying to instill into your mind. That's why when it comes to, for example, a matter of recall, you'll find that you don't actually learn much because you can't recall that much from the actual nature of the sales training. Now, what a lot of people do to caveat that is actually to watch the same thing twice, which isn't actually the way that you learn. If you study any of the books with learning, it comes from ultimately your ability to recall information based upon that which you've learned, and you'll understand where your gaps are based upon the areas you're unable to recall exactly what happened, which is why it's actually really important after watching or even during watching, whether you're taking notes, but to actively engage with your content and then stop watching the content and think, am I able to reproduce, articulate the things which I've learned? And then you'll actually understand where your gaps are. So most people just tend to watch the same thing twice. It gives you that feel-good feeling, but that's a misnomer. You're actually misled because you're not actually educating yourself on the areas where your gaps are. So make sure that in absence of being able to attend live sales calls, you watch sales training. So that's the second bucket. The third bucket is based upon the sales training, based upon that you watch, based upon the live sales calls where you don't have scripts, okay, then you need to build scripts that stem from a proven framework. So what most of us do is that we do build scripts based upon our ideas or something that's ChatGPT generated, which in absence of having a proven template is probably your closest approximation. But if there already is a template for success that exists, get that template, because otherwise you'll be building and leaning into a template that hasn't been proven to work historically. So what people will typically tend to do is quickly build something out without making the necessary search to say, well, you know what? This is kind of a new service, but have we ever sold it before? Is there any evidence of where we've sold it before? Is any of that evidence documented? And can I then begin to build out scripts based upon that? So in the examples of our sales teams where we're building out actually accounting scripts and legal scripts, we do have multiple legal sales calls that have been recorded. We do have multiple accounting calls that have been recorded. It should be from there that you can begin to build some of these scripts. So that's bucket number 3 in terms of the whole process. Build scripts from a proven framework instead of building scripts based upon your assumptions. Only build scripts based upon assumptions where you have an absence of a framework. But then if you can find a proximate framework, so maybe someone in a similar niche or someone online, for example, shows you an example of an accounting sales call or a legal sales call in absence of having your own sales calls, why don't you look at that as a benchmark? Why don't you look at that as a template? If you're selling, for example, a piece of manufacturing equipment and you never sold manufacturing equipment before and you can't get access to the actual manufacturing sales calls from the end client or from your team because you've never done it before, look for manufacturing sales calls on YouTube. Try and find a proximate example of a stylistic way that someone within that niche is already selling if you're new going into that niche and if you're looking to impress quickly. So that's point number 3. Point number 4 is drilling individual aspects of the script. Okay. So you, when it comes to a script, will have areas of the script that you will repeat. So you'll always have, for example, your intro. Then you'll always have your elevator pitch. So the importance of drilling cannot be underestimated because then you're able to move a script into muscle memory. So you need to be able to drill individual aspects of the script because without the drilling, you're not going to ultimately get it to a level of subconsciousness where you're able to just spit out and articulate things from memory. But people want the result without the actual necessarily drilling. And then what sometimes happens in an environment where you're giving leads that you choose to use the actual live leads that you got as your opportunity to learn on the job, which is totally back to front because leads cost money. And ultimately, therefore, you want to come to any lead that you get or any lead that you generate, having already drilled the script. If you're going on to any call and you are still fumbling around and learning the script, you haven't done the appropriate level of drilling. So just simply drilling scripts, much like you do drills in sport, where you drill dribbling if you're in basketball, you drill dribbling if you're in football, you drill back and forths if you're in tennis. Drilling before game time is a proven methodology to help improve the quality of the execution. Now, once you've done that, point number 4 is look at the common objections that you'll get as a salesperson. There'll be industry level common objections and there'll be whole sales types of objections that don't really change. Don't have time, don't have budget, don't ultimately, I'm not the decision maker, I'm not sure. Do you, as a salesperson, have a list of the most common objections on your wall? So you're able to see it every day in front of you. Simply the act of seeing it on your wall will cause you to go into thinking about articulating a response to that objection. And it offers you ultimately point of cognitive reference, visual reference to then say, okay, I don't have time. And if you're unable to quickly articulate a response under pressure, it probably means that you haven't developed common, ultimately, responses to the most common objections. So put a list up of the most common objections that you'll get. And if you're not doing that on your wall and you're in sales, then you should be doing that because it's just going to help increase your ability to sound competent, sound confident based upon the common objections. The next bucket is to practice different aspects of your pitch daily. So if you have the common objections on the wall, if you have the script that's ready, if you're not drilling, if you're not practicing responses to the objections, then fundamentally you're going to get left behind as compared, and again, we'll come to this, as compared to those who choose to put in the work versus everyone else. So that's something that I would highly recommend that you do. Practice different aspects of your pitch daily. So that's point number 6. Let's go to point number 7 now. And point number 7, 8, and 9 are all connected as to one bucket, but we'll break them down into their constituent parts. So point number 6, I believe it is, or point number 7 now, I forget, let's say point number 7, set aside 15 minutes a day of on your clock for self-training, where you can just drill yourself, where you can just walk and pace up and down your room and practice a pitch or practice a response to an objection. Self-training. All you literally need to do is set a clock on the wall and say, great, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to drill and articulate my ability to recall this pitch from memory. I'm going to articulate my ability to look at the objections on my wall, and I'm going to start throwing different responses to the same objection. Oh, okay, you know what? I don't have time. Well, let me ask you this. When is a good time? Okay, great. But what impact will that have if you don't work upon this now? Do you think that that's going to have an ongoing impact? Has this been something that's come up before for you? Another response to, I don't have time. Well, Richard, wouldn't you agree that we're here right now, and what would be the cost of not working on this now? Just if we were to kind of imagine it or to speculate it. Objection number three. And as you can see, based upon where you stumble, because to a degree I'm stumbling there, you'll improve your ability to actually manage any objection that comes up. So 15 minutes a day for self-training. Train yourself without reliance upon other people to improve your ability to handle objections, to articulate your pitch, and to do all of these other elements. So that's point number 7. Point number 8, build in 15 minutes a day for specific video-based training. So there's so much content that's out on YouTube. For example, this will be a piece of content that goes out onto YouTube. And again, set a clock, 15 minutes a day to quickly go in and learn something very specifically tactical to an area that relates to sales. So that could be another way to quickly accelerate your ability to cold call, to handle an objection, to reply. Not all information, of course, is made equal, but if you continuously commit to that 15 minutes, then sometimes all you need is one piece of value. So go to point number 9. Build in and you can see the pattern here. It's all about training. Build in 15 minutes a day for book training. So there's seminal books that people often talk about, whether new or whether old, that exist within the sales space. And some of them come from ultimately self-development. So an example of that might be How to Win Friends and Influence People. Is it sales? Is it communication? It's probably a combination of both. Another book could be Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone. That's a more modern sales book that a lot of people talk about. So make sure that you've got 15 minutes a day where you are building in your book training. So that's point number 9. And the pattern between 7, 8, and 9 is systematizing the way that you learn new information to continuously improve your quality of returns when it comes to being on the phone, learning sales tactics and strategies. Let's get to point number 10. Map out your personal KPIs. What are you trying to achieve here? What is it that you want to, where is it that you want to go? And do you have it stuck up on a wall? Different people call it different things. So people talk about a vision board. The challenge with the vision board, where you have maybe the Ferrari or the house or the jets or the lifestyle, the holidays pinned up, is that you need to correlate that, or you need to, from that, extrapolate out your personal KPIs. What are your personal KPIs? How many appointments do you want a month? How many sales do you want a month? How many dials do you want to make a day? Put your personal KPIs up so you can forever be reminded. So then at least at the end of the day, you can sense check the accountability balance to say, well, did I achieve what I set out to achieve today? So that's another thing that I advocate that you do. Point number 11, and we're going to continue. There's a couple of bonuses here. Point number 11 is you should build volume into your highest return on investment-based activity. So if your highest return on investment-based activity is time on the phone, and for most of you salespeople it is, make sure you structure your day such that, and you structure your work such that you're spending most of your time on the phone. If that's the thing that generates dollars, then you need to have a look at all of the inefficiencies within your workday. You need to ask yourself whether you're making excuses. And if you're in, for example, client relationship management, and your main goal is to keep the clients happy equally, then you should be optimizing for spending your most time on your highest return on investment-based activity. And that's where your time should be going. So make sure you build volume into your highest return on investment-based activity. Point number 12. To do that, you need to map out all of your activities and work out the hierarchy in terms of order of importance or value based upon the activities that you have. You need to figure out what's the actual most important thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for example, if you're in sales, your most important activity is being on the phone. When you're not on the phone, maybe your second most important activity is scheduling follow-up calls with your old prospects. Your third activity might be going back to old prospects and checking in on them and seeing how they are, how they've been, and how things are going. So work out what your most highest return on investment based activities are, and then as a consequence, you'll begin to understand where your time is being spent. And now point number 13 is at least for the course of a week. Get a general sense, build in time tracking for yourself to track how much time you spend on activities versus how much you think you spend. Because everyone gets into this world of reality distortion. For example, where simple example is if you are cold calling, one of the things you can immediately do to tweak how much time you actually spend on the phone is to have a Pomodoro. So have a countdown clock, and you'll see that 20 minutes you can get a lot more dials in than you originally thought. And you may feel that, oh, I spent 2 hours a day on the phone today. But if you don't have a metric that you check against your own benchmarks for actual time tracking, time spent in calls, you might then discover that, you know what, I checked my sales CRM. It felt like I spent 3 hours on the phone today. Actually, I spent 1 hour, 15 minutes. So my time distortion was close to double. So you need to have a data-driven way of determining what's actually happening versus what you think is happening. And if you think about it, it's the core function of any business, because a business has, or you might have a sense of how much money that you brought in versus the actual reality. Well, you know what? Those two contracts didn't actually pan out. How many appointments that you think you generated versus how many people actually turned up. You know what? You booked in 15 appointments, but the turn up rate was 7. So your actual turn up rate for your appointments is 50%. If you don't know these metrics, you don't know if you're improving. And then you don't know what the right role is to work upon. So how many of your clients did you retain? Over how many months did you retain them? People just work based upon intuition, whereas you need to move it into a science. Now, you can do all of these things individually to improve your sales ability without needing anyone else to support you. So again, if you're watching and you're in sales, if you're a sales director or you run a sales team, of course, all of this has some tangible insights. But in any event, the goal of what I'm trying to communicate to you today is that you're in charge of 100% of these things. So I'm going to go through the list. Hopefully I get the order right from memory. Number 1, attend sales calls with the most experienced team members. Number 2, in absence of being able to attend sales calls or in conjunction with attending sales calls, then watch live playback of the most experienced team members having success. Number 3, based upon these calls or in absence of these calls, you need to try and build a script from a proven framework instead of just relying upon your gut. Your gut isn't the best way to succeed. There's always proximate examples of what successful calls look like. Go and look for those. Go and look at those who have been successful, because there's people that have been doing it, people that always have been doing it better than you. So have a look at the people that are doing it better than you and then trying to replicate what they're doing. Number 4, drill individual aspects of the script. So don't drill the whole thing, drill sections of the script, drill the objection handles, drill the introductions, drill the elevator pitches. Number 5, put a list of your most common objections on your wall. See it every day, live it every day, breathe it every day. Number 6, practice different aspects of your pitch daily. You've got the introduction, as we discussed, you've got the elevator pitch, you've got the objections, you've got the going for the close, you've got asking for a follow-up. The standardized sections of a pitch that you will always encounter. Practice these different aspects on a daily basis. Number 7, set aside 15 minutes a day for self-training to make the above happen. Because if you just rely on the thought, I'm going to do it, it's not going to work. You're going to be inconsistent in your approach. So make sure that you consistently have a framework to follow. Number 7, make sure that, I beg your pardon. Number 8, build in 15 minutes a day for video-based training. Learn tactical things. There's so much content that's for specific sections of calls or of your sales process that you can learn from videos. Number 9, build in 15 minutes a day for book training as well. Look at seminal literature. Look at the greats. Look at the most successful sales books. And if you're not reading them, it's like you attempting to finish a physics exam without learning the fundamental laws of gravity. It's just not going to set you up for success. Number 10, map out your personal KPIs, not the company KPIs. What KPIs do you have for yourself? What is your standard of success? Do you even have a benchmark? Have you even thought about it? Put your benchmark in and post it on the wall in front of you. Number 11, build volume into your highest return on investment based activity. Typically, it's going to be you being on the phone. How much time do you spend on the phone? Not an approximation, not a guess. Do you actually know? Have you got a mechanism for tracking that? If you don't, you need to have one. Number 12, map out your highest return on investment based activities. Do you have a list of all of the activities you conduct during a day? Do you know what the highest return on investment activity number 1 is? What is the next one? If it's time spent on the phone, how can you increase your time spent on the phone, and how can you minimize everything else outside of that? And then number 12, if you're, or rather number 13 now, make sure that you track how you actually spend your time versus how you think you spend your time, because reality distortion is real. We all have a different version of mental body dysmorphia. You see it in bodybuilding where big guys think they're skinny and vice versa. Everyone has that in almost every area of your life because you might sleep less or more than you think you do. You might exercise more and less than you think you do. It's the same with the reps you put in at work. So measure the reps so you can begin to manage the reps and then you can manage to improve the way that you sell.